Indexed Universal Life. We're going to explore if you can really get the upside of the stock market without all those stomach churning drops. I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? You want those market gains. Who wouldn't? But the fear of losing your hard earned money, yeah, that's real too. And it's this exact puzzle that led to the creation of the product we're talking about today. Okay, let's break this down. At its heart, an Index Universal Life Policy, or IUL for short, is a type of life insurance. But the real kicker is how the cash value inside of it can grow. Instead of just getting a boring old fixed rate, its growth is linked to how a market index, like the S&P 500, performs. And here's the key. Your money is never actually in the market. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get the basics of what an IUL even is, then how it connects to the market. After that, we'll get into the really important part, the rules that control your returns. We'll see a policy in action, and finally, we'll peek behind the curtain to see how the insurers make this whole thing work. So where did these things even come from? Well, our source material for this, an actuarial study, tells us they popped up in the late 1990s. And they came from a demand by people who, were a little nervous about risk. They wanted a shot at those stock market returns, but just couldn't stomach the thought of the potential losses. All right, so this is the magic trick, right? How does your policy's value follow an index like the S&P 500 if your money isn't invested in it? Well, it's not magic, it's math. The insurance company uses a specific method to calculate how much interest to credit to your account based on what the index did that year. And there are a few different ways they can do this math. The most common are annual reset, which just looks at the change from the beginning of the year to the end, high watermark, which kind of looks for the index's peak during a set period, and point to point, which measures the change between two specific dates that could even be a few years apart. Now, this is where it gets really, really important. Your returns are not a perfect mirror of the index, not even close. Insurance companies have a few levers they can pull, built right into the contract, that control how much of the market's growth you actually get to keep. The first lever is the participation rate. Think of it like this. It's your slice of the pie. If the market goes up, the participation rate decides what percentage of that gain actually counts for you. You get a piece of the action, for sure, but maybe not the whole thing. So a super simple example. Let's say the S&P 500 has a great year. It's up 10%. Awesome, right? Well, if your policy has an 80% participation rate, the interest credited to your account would be based on an 8% gain, not the full 10. Next up is the cap. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's ceiling, a speed limit on your earnings. It doesn't matter how high the market skyrockets, the cap sets the absolute maximum rate of return your policy can get in 1 year. And here's how that plays out. Say the market has a monster year, it's up 12%, but your policy has a cap of 8%. Well, 8% is the most you can get. That cap puts a lid on those truly explosive years. But here is the flip side, and this is the whole reason these products exist, the floor. This is your safety net. If the market tanks, if the index goes down, the floor guarantees that your credited interest rate will not drop below a certain number. And very often, that number is 0%. So you see the trade-off, right? The cap, yeah, it limits your potential when times are great. But in exchange for that, the floor protects your principal and all your past gains from getting wiped out in a market crash. You're giving up the home run to make sure you never, ever strike out. Okay, enough theory. Let's see how all these moving parts, the caps, the floors, the fees, come together in an actual policy illustration from our source text. This is where we see the real-world impact. All right, let's pop the hood on this thing. Every policy has a spec sheet like this that details all the important numbers. You can see the costs, charges, and right here, the participation specs. For this example, we're working with an 80% participation rate and an 8% cap. So with those rules in mind, let's watch how the money in the policy actually grows year after year. Okay, don't let the spreadsheet scare you. It's actually pretty simple. If you look at any single row, it tells a story. You start the year with a certain amount of money. You add your premium. Then they take out their cut, the expense charges, and the cost of the insurance itself. And finally, the fun part, they add the interest that was credited based on the index's performance. Boom, that's your new value to start the next year. We've seen how this works for you, the policyholder, but has it ever crossed your mind how the insurance company can possibly afford to do this? I mean, how can they give you the potential for gains while they take on all the risk of loss? Well, it's a very sophisticated balancing act.
They use a portion of your premium to buy financial instruments called options. These options are what give them access to the market's gains, which they can then pass on to you. The rest of your money gets invested in their own, more conservative general account, which is how they back up that floor and the other guarantees. It is a complex process, and believe me, it is heavily regulated.
And when I say complex, I mean it. Whoa, okay, don't panic when you see this formula. We are not doing algebra today. All this shows is that there is a precise mathematical way they figure out your interest credit. It's not just some number they pull out of a hat. In fact, this complexity was such a new thing that the old rulebooks for life insurance, they just didn't cover it. As our source text points out, the original regulations simply did not anticipate how these IULs would work. So regulators had to step in and create a whole new set of rules just for these products, known as Actuarial Guideline 36. And this guideline lays out these very specific, super technical methods that insurers have to use to prove they have enough money in their reserves to pay out all the future benefits. It just goes to show you the level of financial engineering required behind the scenes to make this all work safely. So when you boil it all down, we land on this fundamental trade-off. The promise of an IUL is powerful, growth potential tied to the market, but with a floor that protects you from losses. The price you pay for that protection is a layer of complexity, plus those caps and participation rates that mean you'll never capture all of the market's gains. And that really brings us to the final question. This structure offers a really compelling blend of safety and growth, but it is not a simple product. So the ultimate question for anyone looking at this is that built-in protection worth the complexity and the limits on the upside? That's a question only you can answer. Thanks for watching.